We continue our 2024 player breakdowns, and today we get into second baseman Luis Garcia Jr. And I'm going to tell you this, don't be surprised if the Nationals decide to trade the second baseman.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as the show page at LO_Nationals for all your latest Nationals news and notes. Make sure to check us out over on Twitter. And while you're at it, search up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcast. That is including over on YouTube. Again, search Locked On Podcast. You can check it up on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you get it. That is where you'll find your daily coverage of the Washington Nationals. Later on in today's show, we've got a Mets-Dodgers NLCS Game 3 preview. We've got Luis Severino against a struggling Walker Buehler who has not looked good in the postseason. And let me tell you this, the Mets in 2024 remind me of a very special team of here in DC. We'll discuss that in the third segment of today's show. In the second segment, I'm going to tell you why I think the Nationals could trade Luis Garcia Jr. this offseason, and I'll actually even go this far. I think they will. I'll discuss that in the second segment of today's show, but we get started off discussing a lot of different things, including Luis Garcia Jr. But before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So let's jump into it right now, as Luis Garcia Jr. actually kind of had a breakout season for the Washington Nationals. And I think a lot of people out there in the cold open here, I was saying that I do think the Nationals decide to trade him this offseason. I'll explain that why a little bit later on in the show today. But looking at the numbers from the top, Luis Garcia Jr. had his best offensive season by far and away. And even then, getting into the numbers of overall second baseman across Major League Baseball, if you're around here, if you're an everydayer out there, first and foremost, thank you. Second off, you know that I like offense. That's just what wins baseball in today's game. You do need pitching, obviously, but you know what I'm saying. Luis Garcia Jr. statistically may have been in fact, I'll even go this far and say Luis Garcia Jr. was the third best offensive second baseman in all of baseball this season. Behind Ketel Marte, who had an MVP-like season, over 136 games. He had just a huge season, hitting 36 home runs, 95 RBIs, had a 932 OPS. Right behind him was Jose Altuve, who is a MVP winner, World Series champion, and he's Jose Altuve. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame, I think, someday, but still, you understand what I'm saying. And then there's Luis Garcia Jr. He is right behind those two guys as far as his offensive metrics go. He had a 282 batting average, had a 762, which ranked third in all of baseball as far as second basemen go, not just in the National League. He was in all of baseball as far as second basemen go, as far as his OPS. Had a 2.2 WAR. He only struck out 86 times. Really, as far as second basemen go, some of the best metrics in all of baseball in that category, just behind like Nico Horner and guys like that who are also in this category. But Luis Garcia Jr., this was kind of the breakout campaign that we all expected. Now, his splits are a little weird. In 2024, I don't know if you really noticed this, but Luis Garcia Jr. at home compared to on the road was a completely different hitter. He just was. In 74 games at home, Luis Garcia Jr. nearly batted .330 with a .918 OPS. That is like all-star, at least all-star caliber kind of numbers. Ketel Marte kind of numbers. His batting average on balls in play was at 333. His OPS plus was around a 153. All-star, stud, 24 years old. That is what we want to see from Luis Garcia Jr. But then on the road, this is where the numbers kind of equal out a little bit. Hit a 599 OPS this season. Now, what kind of goes into that? Again, I've talked about this all the time with baseball. It is about comfort. You're put in situations to be comfortable. When you play 162 games, you have to have a number one routine, and number two, you should feel comfortable. And wherever you are playing, whichever you are batting in the lineup, whether you are batting ninth or batting second, wherever you are in the lineup, you should feel comfortable. And also where you're playing defensively, baseball is a mental game. It just is. So I think Luis Garcia Jr. kind of got caught in the motion where he can turn it on when it comes to his normal routine at home. And then on the road, for whatever reason, his numbers drop dramatically. His slugging percentage down from home against away is unbelievable. A 549 slug at home compared to a 335 slug at home. Out on the road, rather. That is over 200 point difference right then and there. His on-base percentage, over 100-point difference from 369 to a 265. His batting average, down nearly 100 points from a 329 to a 233. I can't explain that. I just can't. Luis Garcia Jr., like a lot of these young nationals who are also in this conversation, C.J. Abrams, Keibert Ruiz, Mackenzie Gore. While Garcia Jr. did have pretty damn good numbers overall this season, and again, you'll take these numbers any day coming from him, nearly a 2020 season, which you would join a pretty exclusive list for Washington Nationals players, most recently C.J. Abrams, who did that this year, just 2 stolen bases away, or 2 home runs away from having a 2020 season. Luis Garcia Jr., you would like to think that this year was a building block year. Last year, after the trade deadline in 2023, Luis Garcia was struggling, had a 688 OPS, a 90 OPS plus, was a below league average hitter in what was his third real season up at the bigs, and he was sent down. Mike Rizzo went on with the Junkies and talked about the lack of preparation and really just kind of hinted at the fact that this guy needs to mature. And even then, Luis Garcia Jr. had a lot of ups in 2023, but that last month, it was brutal. Brutal. In the second half of the season, you saw a much different Luis Garcia Jr. A much different one, in fact. Someone who could be a team leader down the road, someone who can make a big difference in a playoff push, someone who is statistically one of the better offensive pieces as far as second baseman goes, and in fact, may have been the best hitter on this Nationals team throughout the 2024 season, excluding James Wood, who came up in the middle of the summer. That's how good of a season Luis Garcia Jr. had. And again, if he were to put up these numbers, batting 282, a 444 slug, a 762 OPS, batting 18 home runs, 70 RBIs, 22 stolen bases with subpar defense, I hate to say it, maybe my expectations are low, but I'll take that any single day of the week from Luis Garcia Jr. I will. Call me an idiot, whatever you want. If you're a second baseman, and if you're putting up those numbers, I read you the stats. A top 3 offensive second baseman in all of baseball, that is what we called a building block. But I think, again, the main key here for Luis Garcia Jr., really something to look at, is how real was this quote-unquote breakout? Can he get better? And will he get better? That is a job for Mike Rizzo, Davey Martinez, and the rest of them to figure out. And also, by the way, I think that is why the Nationals do decide that he is not a building block, and why I think the Nationals do decide to trade him in 2024 this offseason. I'll explain that further because you might be scratching your head after all the compliments saying, well, you just said he's a building block. He could be. I'd be fine with him doing that. But also, are you really buying into this turnaround? I'll discuss why I'm not really buying that much into it. Before we get into it, though, I'm going to tell you guys about some of our very good friends over at FanDuel. And of course, we have told you all about FanDuel. And NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, which is America's one sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Again, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet over at FanDuel.com. Maybe this weekend you have Jaden Daniels going up against the Panthers. The Panthers are a terrible team. I can tell you this. I'm going to open up FanDuel. I'm going to place a $5 same-game parlay on you-know-what. Terry McLaurin, anytime touchdown scorer. Jaden Daniels over in the passing prop section for passing yards, as well as completions. He's got one of the highest, if not the highest completion rate in all of the National Football League. Do not miss this chance, NFL fans, because you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, which, again, is America's #1 sportsbook. So get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. We get back into it with telling you why I think Luis Garcia Jr. could be trade bait this year. Also, I will say, after answering this, I will get into some 2025 projections as if he will be the Nationals' second baseman because, let's be honest, will the Nationals try to explore a trade at this point for him? I don't know. But I'm going to tell you why they should. I think Luis Garcia is a decent baseball player. He's good. He had an above-average year at second base. But here's the thing. You can improve. And I think that some teams out there, with Luis Garcia's strikeout rate, with the way that he could be defensively over at second base with some tweaks, I think there is an analytical kind of sound organization out there ready to win now, ready to replace whoever's over at second base for them that may say, we could use this guy and we could use him for the next few seasons. I don't think he has that big of a future here in DC. In fact, if it were up to me, if I was a GM, I'd be shopping Luis Garcia Jr. for a number of reasons. Number one, the inconsistencies of Luis Garcia Jr. is too much for me. It just is. I can't go into 2025 thinking that Luis Garcia Jr. will build off of what he just did this season. Now, again, I do think if you've been listening for a while now, you probably understand this because I've just harped on this many different times at this point. The way that they have handled Luis Garcia Jr. over the years has been malpractice. Bringing him up, shipping him back down. Bringing him up, shipping him back down. He's either a second baseman / shortstop or he's not. This was once a top 100 prospect according to multiple different sites. Now, again, I use that kind of loosely because if you look at his numbers, they weren't really all that impressive. But he's also doing that at a young age of 19, 20 years old. Luis Garcia Jr., one thing is for sure, the guy has the ability to hit. He can put the ball in play like no one else. Him and Keibert Ruiz, they are in lockstep in that business there. But I also think this is probably his ceiling, what we just saw this year. Having a 762 OPS with subpar average defense at best, you can replace that. And I also think a team out there that, again, is ready to win now who may not have the biggest hole over at second base, but you can have someone who is big league ready, who's got a few years left to control under him. And also, maybe you see some untapped potential like the Mariners did with Victor Robles, and you can turn him around. I think a team may see value in that. And if I'm the Nationals, I would try to get a pitcher or two that is big league ready to jump in the bullpen or be a starting pitcher this coming season. Or maybe a second baseman that's under team control for the next 7 seasons. I've seen people throw out the idea to extend Luis Garcia Jr., to not really be all ultra aggressive and spending in free agency just for Luis Garcia. Whatever is out there, I've seen it all at this point with Nationals fans. I've talked about it all at this point as well. But I think the time is now. Ask yourself this. Will his value get as high as it is right now? And when I ask myself that question, I don't think it does. I just don't. Luis Garcia Jr., he's good. And some people who say, well, what if we can't replace him? He's a replaceable player. Again, Luis Garcia Jr. is a fine player. Above average offensively over at second base. Check that. Average to subpar defensively. Check that. Young, under team control over the next few seasons. Fine. But I think his value could be seen in the trade market. One thing is for sure, if the Nationals were to lose Luis Garcia Jr., if they were to trade him, there's a couple different possibilities here. Again, you get starting pitching help. Someone that can help you on this rotation tomorrow, in 2 days, in a few years from now. Someone who's under team control. I also think it's a possibility in which the Nationals, let's say if they were trying to make a splash trade for a Garrett Crochet type, you package Luis Garcia Jr., who's under team control for a few seasons, someone who could be traded down the line, or they try to build with him as a building block. And you also package in some prospects. You get a big league ready guy who's an above average second baseman, offensively speaking, so it can help your team today and be, not the face of the organization, but a building block. He's a good, fine player. But I think when someone has reached their ceiling, and if their ceiling is meh, you can move off them and try to find value elsewhere. Because I don't think Luis Garcia Jr. was a problem by any means, but I also don't think he was a solution. And I think we were so kind of stuck in the fact that this team doesn't really have that much major league ready talent at their footsteps. And I think that may scare people as to why they wouldn't want to trade him. But if the front office, if they had the foresight to really kind of look into that magic 8-ball and say, will Luis Garcia Jr. get even more here? Will we get more from Luis Garcia Jr. overall? I think the truth and honest answer is you probably won't. And that's okay. You can do that. You can move off of someone who may not be the best of players, but also is not the worst and is not the problem of your team. It's just about finding talent and finding answers elsewhere. Now, I do get into this for a 2025 projection. Where I project Luis Garcia Jr. going into next season is right around where he was this last year. A 280 batting average, a 330 OBP, and maybe a 450 slug, hovering around a 780 OPS. 20 home runs, 70 RBIs. That's good. But again, I think you can use that value from Luis Garcia Jr. and find it elsewhere. Think back to when the Nationals won the World Series in 2019. Who was your starting second baseman in that playoff run? Asdrubal Cabrera. So when it was DFA'd by the Rangers, the Nationals picked him up, and he went on that magical carpet ride with this team all the way through 2019 and helped them win a World Series. Before that, it was Brian Dozier. And let's be honest, it really didn't make that big of a difference who's playing over at second base. Cabrera was obviously the better player. But in second base, as far as major league hitters go, you can find someone to replace the kind of numbers that Luis Garcia Jr. has. And again, I want to reiterate this. It's not the fact is that I think Luis Garcia Jr. is bad. I think you could use that value and find it elsewhere and have that be probably of more value to this team, like adding starting pitching or adding bullpen help or even getting a fresh second baseman or first baseman through the door here in DC and have them start their career. That's why I think the Nationals should trade Luis Garcia Jr. this offseason. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, check us out over on Twitter. Just search Locked On Nationals. Check me out over on Twitter at Ryan Clary 11. And of course, check us out wherever you get your podcast. Search Locked On Nationals wherever you get your pods, whether it's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and many, many more outlets out there. Just, again, search Locked On Nationals and hit that subscriber button. But now we tell you guys about some of our very good friends before we preview the ALCS, or the NLCS rather, over at Gametime. And of course, Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier, and prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I can tell you this, all season long, as I went to Nationals game basically once a week as a fan, also as a media member, I would open up Gametime. I would find their flash zone deals. And of course, my favorite feature ever is you can see the image in your seat view right from your phone and all of it. And of course, the lowest price is guaranteed event cancellation protection and also job loss protection as well. And you can find the last minute tickets there, always with our friends over at Gametime. And of course, Gametime picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And of course, you can have Gametime ticket coverage, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, let me tell you guys about some of our also very good friends over at PrizePicks. And of course, I have told you about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money on sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. And of course, I can tell you guys that you can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. And PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users today and sign up today. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money as quick as 15 minutes. Maybe you think Mark Vientos goes above the hits today, maybe over 1.5 hits, whatever it is. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. And of course, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. We now get back into it, previewing the NLCS tonight, and you have got Game 3 of the New York Mets. And I hate to say it, I've been saying it for about a month now. The New York Mets kind of feel like the 2019 Nationals. They just do. And I hate to admit that because I don't like the New York Mets. I don't like rooting for New York. I kind of like the Yankees, I'm not going to lie. Call me weird. I'm weird. But the New York Mets, I would never want to root for the New York Mets. But as I watch them, they seem to have an answer for everything thrown their way. That is what the 2019 Nationals did. And also, I hate to say, quote unquote, teams of destiny, that's what they do as well. The Nationals were a team of destiny. You all felt different heading into that October. Mets fans, it just feels different for them. They were counted out early on in the season. New York media was killing them for what they did in the offseason, aka nothing, saying that they're going to be saving money and taking the season and trying to get Juan Soto. Here they are tied up with the Dodgers at 1-1, heading to Citi Field. And tonight you've got someone who has been there and done that in the postseason with Luis Severino going up against Walker Buehler, who has also been there and done that during the postseason. But they've got the leg up because Walker Buehler is not the Walker Buehler of 2019. This is not the guy that I was petrified of watching him pitch against the Nationals in that 2019 postseason. He has been a shell of himself since coming off the injured list. Has basically missed the last 2 seasons. Has not been himself. If I'm the Dodgers, I'm going any way possible outside of this one. They should not throw Walker Buehler in this ball game. If you think that you have a chance to win the series, which they obviously do, why are you going out there with Walker Buehler? You are going to lose this game tonight, and selfishly, the New York Mets will go up 2-1, and I'm going to have to hear it from New York Mets fans for the rest of time. that they're going to the World Series. Everyone doubted them. It sucks. But whatever. We'll get over it. And hopefully the Dodgers, they surprise us tonight. Walker Buehler maybe dominates. Maybe Luis Severino isn't that good. Mark Vientos can cool down. Francisco Lindor can cool down as well. And Pete Alonso doesn't pull a rabbit out of his hat again. Maybe we can hope that. And Jesse Winker, maybe he stinks too. We'll see. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Enjoy postseason baseball. Go Nats.